Calling it right now, the Kamikita photographer are gonna find some way of working this into their own manga, and of course maintain the original genders, because that's just how the Kamikitas work. Following in this pattern they're suddenly going back and forth between plot relevant and filler episodes, this week we have an adventure involving Hikaru's mother, who was a mangaka with an art style that looks like one of my favorites from the 90s. And she is officially now one of my favorite Precure moms. She respects the classics. In fact, the Segikami of Rui Araizumi was so impressive that her editor informed her that she had got the go-ahead to make a pilot chapter for their manga magazine. Though, just like in the real manga industry, she wouldn't be guaranteed any long-term serialization yet, as it was still her first work and they needed to gauge her ability. Still, much like her daughter, Terumi Hoshino was a pure and true star chaser. The next day, Hikaru told her friends about her mother's accomplishments, as well as their struggles, as she was already suffering from writer's block on what I remind you was her chapter 0. Honestly, it makes you wonder how she got this far. Also, nice recreation of Tokashi's creative process. Though to be fair, the publishers did kinda spring it on her rather suddenly, and thus she didn't have time to hire any assistants. Wanting to help their friend's mother, the Precure volunteered to become mangaka assistants. Children, you have no idea what you're signing up for. Still, even seeing Terumi dead under her desk didn't deter our brave heroines. They greeted the missus, with Lala leaving the strongest impression on her and actually giving her inspiration for her manga that just so happened to borrow a lot of elements from what we're currently watching. The main character of this manga was clearly based on our resident space girl, and her sidekick was a very familiar looking girl. Though really, based on everyone's character development in these first 18 episodes, I'm pretty sure that's also the case for this anime as well. However, while it was a solid concept for a Sunday morning anime, it didn't get the okay from Terumi's editor, Yumeo. And I'll say right now, this guy was the most infuriating part of this episode, basically being the equivalent of Maino from Nozaki-kun, constantly trying to rewrite Terumi's manga based solely on his own personal preferences. According to him, shoujo manga with sci-fi and fantasy elements didn't sell well, which, yeah, sure dude. You know, it's because of idiots like you that we ended up with about half a dozen different villains in the Android saga. Though at least, we got some incredibly cute chibi forms for Hikaru and Lala out of it. Terumi tried showing him some of her early drafts and okay, I was kidding about the Slayer stuff earlier, but that absolutely is Lena Inverse. Toy, are you just challenging them to file copyright infringement? Because I gotta warn you, that's going around a lot lately. Anyway, to avoid any potential lawsuits, Hikaru convinced her friends to act as models for her mother, and it did inspire her into writing a forbidden love story between a doctor and a nurse, which then suddenly jumped the shark by introducing way too many high-concept sci-fi elements all at once. Which, to be fair, is still very much a common problem, especially in the anime industry. Look at you, Samurai Flamenco. Still, while Yumeo was right to stop this from suddenly becoming level E, I can't say I'm a fan of his ideas either, like suddenly introducing another love interest into the story. Because yeah, just adding more and more love interest into a simple romance makes everything better! Still, in spite of his awful pandering ideas, Terumi remained a professional and went along with it. And while even Hikaru could tell these were bad ideas, she and the rest of the Precure worked tirelessly to help complete the manga. That night, we finally learned a bit more about Hikaru's father, who apparently was traveling the world as a part of his job. Also, he seemed to have absolutely no camera skills, as he took a picture that completely blocked out his face. Though really, it was more than likely for the sake of narrative convenience. Speaking of which, Hikaru dug up an old manga Terumi made just for her daughter. Well, at least her mom had enough sense not to try and sell an obvious self-insert work to general audiences and hope to turn a profit. Yes, I'm looking at you, American comic book industry. Boy, I'm actually a bit of a pessimist, aren't I? Unfortunately, this being a Sunday morning anime, Hikaru of course had to deal with some stereotypical bullies who made fun of the fact that her mother drew up a whole manga specifically for her. Seriously, if I were at their age, I think that would be totally awesome. Regardless, it did make for a very touching scene between mother and daughter as little Hikaru learned that the true value of anything was determined by the owner. Which also seemed to connect with something at the end of this episode, but let's not get too far ahead. Anyway, Hikaru continued to cheer her mother on with some tea, even though judging by those bags, she should have made coffee instead. A few days later, Terumi's pilot manga got published, and they were going to throw a congratulatory party for her, but unsurprisingly to anyone watching the show, her manga was denied serialization. Yeah, again, thanks a lot, Mino. And of course, when a side character is depressed, that's a signal for the villains to come in and oh no, it's Miss BDSM. Seriously, ever since this character gave up on her gimmick of being an actual strategist, she's been on a bigger slump than even Terumi. Oh well, at least this time her victim was of legal age. The Precure engaged the mangaka Notore with their own pens in an above average fight this week, and at least the bad guys got in some significant hits. But with the encouragement of the manga filled with the imaginations of her mother fueling her, Hikaru managed to hold out long enough for her team to arrive and finish things off with the sudden crawl. Okay, can we not have the rubber-suited female monster make that face?
You know, for kids!
Anyway, they rescued Terumi, and after conveniently leaving her manga out for her to read, Hikaru managed to convince her to write a new manga. For her latest outing, she drew stories about a familiar-looking team of superheroines.
Okay, 1, you're stepping on the Kamikita Futago's territory, and 2, your editor already told you he doesn't want any sort of fantasy story.
Yeah, apparently after her first manga failed, this numbnut decided to backpedal and told Terumi that she should write whatever she wanted.
Why wasn't this a-hole the victim of the week?
Anyway, while this would have been a fine place to end the episode, we actually ended things on a rainbow-colored planet, which I'm sure has never been mentioned before in this show, and Blue Cat revealing that she had acquired a star pen.
This week's episode was written by Yuji Kobayashi, a guy who, for this series, has written mostly okay-ish episodes, and while this episode was kind of the same, it was his best effort so far, if only because he did develop the show's supposed main character. Even though, again, I'd argue that's actually Lala.
Much like his last outing, this was basically a slice-of-life episode focused around our heroines trying to help someone create an entertaining product. As someone who tries, and doesn't always succeed, at delivering a similar product on a weekly basis, I do find stories like this interesting, as it does allow the writer to explore some real-life struggles that these creators go through. As much as I legit dislike Yumeo and his annoying antics, I will admit he did accomplish his role as an executive mailer who do unfortunately exist and ruin many potential creators by forcing them to conform to a bunch of trends rather than do what they think might make for a good product. Heck, even the Kamikita Futago seemed to really relate with this episode. Moreover, this led to one of the few legit good applications of the show's main theme of imagination, as Yumeo was restricting Terumi's imagination and making her write a rather generic manga. As a character who wants to help spread imagination, Hikaru was able to pick up on this and wanted to encourage her mother to do her own thing, but at the same time, she didn't want her to fail by going against the stupid demands of her editor. It's honestly a lot more characterization we've seen out of her than in previous outings, as while she is very free-spirited, Hikaru is still a stickler for the rules, likely because of a certain grumpy old codger in her life. As for the rest of the episode, it was okay. The pacing was a little slow, and I kind of wish the fairies could have played some sort of role this week. Though, to be fair to Kobayashi, many of the show's lower points weren't directly his fault. Tenjo is simply no longer an interesting villain in the slightest, and I don't know why they're going with this filler than plot episode format. Still, at least the rest of the Precure did play minor roles this week, being inspiration for Terumi's manga, and hopefully these are all signs that this show's writing is becoming a little more character and theme focused.
Production on my next series review is entering into its final stages.
I'm currently projecting a Wednesday or Thursday release, but I won't make any promises, knowing my luck with these videos.
still look forward to it, and until then, no farewell for now, my friends. And you know, all this talk about the Kamihito Futago has made me want to check out their Twitter. Now these ladies understand good sci-fi.